The mining colony of Dust Ridge wasn't supposed to exist anymore. According to every official record in the Galactic Union database, the settlement had been abandoned 12 years ago when the ore deposits ran dry. The prefab buildings should have been empty husks, slowly buried by the red sandstorms that swept across the planet's surface every few weeks. But Mira knew better. She had been born here, raised here, and when everyone else left, she had stayed behind. She moved through the abandoned corridors like a ghost, her footsteps silent on the metal floors. The life support system still hummed in the lower levels, powered by the old fusion reactor that nobody had bothered to decommission. It was inefficient, sure, but it gave her air, water, and just enough warmth to survive the frozen nights. The Galactic Union had written this place off as dead, and that suited Mira just fine. At 19 years old, she had spent a third of her life completely alone. Most people would have gone mad from the isolation, but Mira had found a strange peace in it. No authorities demanding registration papers, no identity scans, no questions about her past or her family. Just her, the empty buildings, and the endless red desert beyond the colony walls. She made her way to the observation deck, a large transparent dome that overlooked the mining pits. This was her favorite spot, especially in the early morning when the twin suns rose over the horizon and painted everything in shades of orange and gold. She had a routine now. Wake up, check the systems, scavenge for supplies in the sectors she hadn't fully explored yet, and then spend the evening reading from the colony's old digital library. The library had been her salvation. Thousands of books, technical manuals, entertainment programs, and educational courses, all left behind when the evacuation happened. She had taught herself engineering, studied alien languages, learned about worlds she would never visit. The knowledge filled the empty spaces in her mind, kept her sharp, kept her sane. Mira pressed her hand against the cool glass of the dome and watched the sunrise. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, ships moved between stars, carrying people to destinations she could only imagine. The Galactic Union sprawled across hundreds of systems, a massive coalition of alien species united under a single government. Humans were part of it, of course, though they were considered one of the younger races, still proving themselves worthy of respect. She had been 7 when her mother died in the mining accident. There had been no other family, no one to take her in. The colony administrator had promised to arrange transport to an orphanage on the nearest core world. But Mira had overheard the truth. Human orphans from failed colonies often ended up in labor camps or worse, so when the evacuation shuttles started loading, Mira had hidden in the maintenance tunnels until everyone was gone. For the first few years, she had lived in constant fear that someone would come back, that she would be discovered and dragged away to whatever fate awaited unwanted children. But as time passed and the colony remained forgotten, she began to relax. She had won. She had escaped the system entirely. She was free in a way that most people could never understand. The sound of engines cut through her thoughts like a knife. Mira's heart stopped. She pressed herself against the wall, eyes fixed on the sky. 3 ships descended through the atmosphere, their hulls gleaming in the morning light. They were military vessels, sleek and deadly, bearing the silver insignia of the Galactic Union Army. They circled the colony once, twice, and then began their landing sequence in the main courtyard. Panic flooded through her veins. She ran from the observation deck, her mind racing. They were here. After 12 years of silence, they were finally here. Had they detected the reactor signature? Had someone reported anomalous power readings from an abandoned world? It didn't matter. What mattered was that she had minutes, maybe seconds, before armed soldiers swept through the complex. She sprinted toward her quarters, grabbing her emergency pack. She had prepared for this scenario 100 times in her mind, but now that it was happening, everything felt unreal. Food concentrates, water purification tablets, a thermal blanket, and her mother's old data pad. She slung the pack over her shoulder and headed for the service tunnels. The tunnels were her domain, a maze of maintenance shafts and ventilation ducts that connected every part of the colony. She could disappear into them, make her way to the outer sections, maybe even slip out into the desert. But as she reached the access hatch, she heard voices echoing through the corridor behind her. Spread out. Check every sector. The reactor is active, which means someone is here. The voice was deep, authoritative, and definitely not human. Mira recognized the slight hiss at the end of each word. Sethian, probably. Reptilian species known for their military prowess and their rigid adherence to law. This was bad. Sethians didn't give up once they started a hunt. She dropped into the tunnel and sealed the hatch behind her. crawling as quickly and quietly as she could through the narrow passage. Her breathing sounded impossibly loud in the confined space. The tunnel led deeper into the colony's infrastructure, past water recyclers and power conduits, toward the old storage sections that hadn't been touched in years. Behind her, she heard the hatch open. Footsteps clanged on metal. Thermal signature detected. Subject is moving through the maintenance system. Section 7, they had scanners. Of course they had scanners. Mira's mind spun through possibilities, each one worse than the last. She couldn't outrun military technology. She couldn't hide from thermal imaging. She couldn't fight trained soldiers. She was trapped, and she had always known that one day this would happen. But knowing it and experiencing it were two very different things. She emerged from the tunnel into a large storage bay filled with empty crates and old equipment. There was another exit on the far side, but she would have to cross open space to reach it. She hesitated, weighing her options, and in that moment of indecision, the soldiers caught up. 5 of them poured into the room, weapons raised. 2 Sethians, tall and scaled with golden eyes that tracked her every movement. 2 humans in full combat armor, and 1 alien she didn't recognize. All tentacles and shifting colors, probably a Colossian scout. They formed a semicircle, blocking any escape route. "Don't move," the lead Sethian commanded. His weapon was pointed at her chest, steady and unforgiving. Mira raised her hand slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. 12 years of freedom, ending in a dusty storage bay on a planet nobody cared about. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but she knew it would be useless. Instead, she stood perfectly still and waited for whatever came next. The soldiers moved forward cautiously, as if she might be dangerous. One of the humans produced a scanning device and swept it over her. No weapons, no implants. Biometrics show human female, approximately 19 standard years. No identification in the system. No identification? The Sethian's eyes narrowed. How is that possible? I don't exist, Mira said quietly. Not according to your records. I'm nobody. The soldiers exchanged glances. The Solosian's tentacles rippled with what might have been confusion or curiosity. Nobody spoke for a long moment. And in that silence, Mira realized that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly predict. The interrogation room aboard the military vessel was cold and sterile. Mira sat on a metal bench, her hands free but her options limited. A single door separated her from the corridor outside, and she knew it was locked. 2 guards stood watch, their expressions unreadable behind their helmets. She had been here for 3 hours and nobody had told her anything. She tried to keep calm, tried to remember that she hadn't actually committed any crime. Staying in an abandoned colony wasn't illegal, was it? But the lack of identification was a problem. In the Galactic Union, everyone was supposed to be registered, tracked, accounted for. She was an anomaly in a system that didn't tolerate anomalies. The door finally opened and a woman entered. She was human, which surprised Mira. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark skin and hair cut military short. Her uniform bore the insignia of a major, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. She carried a datapad and took the seat across from Mira without asking permission. "My name is Major Kells," she said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. "I'm the commanding officer of this unit. We need to talk about what you're doing here." Mira met her gaze. "I live here. I've lived here for 12 years. Alone? Since you were 7 years old?" Kells swiped through something on her datapad. According to the records, this colony was evacuated in 2143. There were no children listed as unaccounted for. "Nobody looked very hard," Mira replied. "I hid until everyone was gone. I didn't want to leave. Why not? This place is barely habitable. It's better than the alternatives." Mira folded her arms. "I know what happens to orphans from failed colonies. Labor camps, indenture contracts, experimentation facilities. I chose freedom instead." Kells studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. A flicker of what might have been respect. "You survived 12 years alone. That's remarkable. How did you manage it?" "The reactor still works. The life support systems are functional. I learned to repair things using the manuals in the library. I'm good at fixing things." Mira paused. "Why are you here? Why now after all this time?" "That's classified information," Kells said, but then she seemed to reconsider. "However, since you're already involved, I suppose it doesn't hurt to tell you. We detected unusual energy signatures coming from this sector. Given the proximity to contested space, we had to investigate. Imagine our surprise when we found an active colony that's supposed to be dead. Contested space. Mira knew what that meant. The Galactic Union had been in a cold war with the Kryn Collective for decades, a conflict that occasionally flared into open warfare. This region was near the border, which explained the military presence. "So what happens to me now?" Mira asked. "Am I under arrest?" "That depends." Kels leaned back in her chair. "You're not in trouble for living here, but the lack of legal identity is a problem. We need to register you, get you into the system properly. After that, we'll need to relocate you to a proper settlement." "I don't want to be relocated." "That's not your choice, I'm afraid. This colony is about to become a military installation. We need this location for strategic purposes. Everyone who isn't authorized personnel will have to leave." Mira's stomach dropped. They were taking her home. After everything she had done to survive, to remain free, they were forcing her back into the system she had escaped. "You can't do this. I'm sorry, but we can." Kels's expression softened slightly. "Look, I understand this is difficult, but you're 19 years old with no education, no credentials, no legal existence. Out here on your own, you have no future. At least in the Union proper, we can get you training, find you a place in society." "I don't want a place in your society." Mira's voice was harder than she intended. "I want to be left alone." Kels stood up, tucking her datapad under her arm. "I'll give you some time to process this. We won't be leaving for another 2 days while we set up the installation. Think about what you want to do with your life, Mira. This is a chance to start over properly." She left the room and Mira was alone again with the guards. Start over properly. As if the life she had built meant nothing. As if survival wasn't enough. Anger burned in her chest, hot and fierce. She had outsmarted the system for 12 years, and now they were forcing her back into the cage. The next day passed slowly. They brought her meals, allowed her to use the facilities, but kept her confined to the small quarters they had assigned her. Through the window, she could see her colony being transformed. Soldiers moved equipment into the buildings. Ships landed and took off. Her home was disappearing before her eyes, turned into something foreign and military. On the second day, Major Kels came to see her again. "We've processed your registration," she said, handing Mira a small identification card. "You're officially a citizen of the Galactic Union now. Congratulations." Mira looked at the card. Her face stared back at her from the holographic surface, along with a string of numbers and codes that meant nothing to her. "What about relocation?" "We've arranged for you to be transported to Haven Station. It's a civilian hub with good opportunities for young people. They have training programs, job placement services, all the support you'll need." Kels paused. "It's not what you want, but it's a good life. You'll see. Haven Station." Mira had read about it in the library. A massive orbital platform that housed millions of people, all living in neat little compartments, following neat little rules. The thought made her sick. "There's another option," Kels said quietly, "though I wasn't supposed to mention it." Mira looked up sharply. "What option?" "I've been watching you these past 2 days. The way you've adapted to this situation, the way you survived alone for so long. You have something rare, Mira. Resourcefulness, independence, the ability to thrive in impossible conditions." Kels crossed her arms. "The Galactic Union Army is always looking for people with those qualities. Specifically, Special Operations is recruiting. You want me to join the military?" Mira couldn't hide her disbelief. "I want to give you a choice. You can go to Haven Station and spend years trying to fit into civilian life. Or you can train with us. We'll teach you combat skills, advanced technology, strategy. You'll see worlds most people never dream of, and you'll be serving a purpose, protecting the Union from threats most citizens don't even know exist. I don't want to serve anyone. Then don't think of it as service. Think of it as a trade. You give us your skills and we give you freedom of a different kind. Special ops teams operate independently, often behind enemy lines. It's dangerous work, but it's real. No bureaucracy, no sitting in an office, no pretending to be something you're not." Kels met her eyes. "You survived 12 years alone on a dead planet. I think you could handle it." Mira's mind raced. This wasn't what she wanted, but it was better than being shipped off to some crowded station where she would have to smile and pretend to fit in. At least in Special Operations, her skills would matter. Her ability to survive, to adapt, to disappear when necessary. Those were the things that had kept her alive, and maybe they could keep her free in a different way. "I need time to think," Mira said. "You have until tomorrow morning," Kels replied. "After that, you're on a transport to Haven Station whether you like it or not. Choose wisely." That night, Mira lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. She thought about her mother, about the colony, about the life she had built in the shadows. She thought about freedom and what it really meant. Was it hiding from the world, or was it finding a way to move through it on your own terms? By morning, she had made her decision. She found Major Kells in the command center reviewing tactical displays with her officers. "I'll do it," Mira said. "I'll join Special Operations." Kells turned, and for the first time she smiled. "Good. We ship out for the training facility in 6 hours. Pack light. Where we're going, you won't need much." Mira nodded. She didn't own much anyway. Just her mother's data pad and the clothes on her back. Everything else was already gone, swallowed up by the military machine that had claimed her home. As she walked back to her quarters, she wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life or the smartest decision. Only time would tell. The training facility was called Iron Shore, and it existed on a moon that had no breathable atmosphere and temperatures cold enough to freeze metal. It was a place designed to break people, to sort the capable from the dreamers. Mira arrived with 30 other recruits, most of them older, all of them looking more confident than she felt. The first week was orientation, which mostly consisted of physical tests and psychological evaluations. Mira passed the physical tests easily. Years of climbing through maintenance tunnels and hauling equipment had made her stronger than she looked. The psychological evaluations were harder. The counselors kept asking about her childhood, her isolation, her feelings about authority. She gave them the answers she thought they wanted to hear, but she could tell they weren't entirely convinced. Then the real training began. Instructor Vex was a Crothian, a species known for their 4 arms and their complete lack of sympathy. He stood before the assembled recruits in the training yard, his silver eyes scanning each of them like he was measuring them for coffins. "Most of you will fail," he said bluntly. "Special Operations doesn't need soldiers who follow orders blindly. We need soldiers who can think independently, who can survive when everything goes wrong, who can complete missions that officially don't exist. If you can't handle that, leave now and save us all some time." Nobody moved. Vex's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Very well. Let's begin with something simple. Survival exercise. You'll be dropped in the wilderness zone with nothing but a knife and a comm beacon. The beacon only works once, and using it means automatic failure. Your objective is to reach the extraction point 60 kilometers north within 5 days. Any questions?" A Turian recruit raised his hand. "What about food and water?" "Figure it out," Vex replied. That's the point. They were dropped in groups of 5. Mira's group included 2 humans, a Sethian, and a Delcari engineer who seemed more nervous than the rest combined. The wilderness zone was a frozen wasteland dotted with ice formations and deep crevasses. The wind howled constantly and the cold bit through their thin uniforms within minutes. "We need shelter first," one of the humans said. His name was Torres, and he had a military background. "Then we figure out the rest. North is that way," the Sethian crest pointed with a clawed hand. "We should start moving immediately. The faster we cover ground, the better. In this cold, we'll be dead before nightfall." The Delcari, whose name was Pim, was already shivering. "We need fire, we need protection from the wind." They argued for 10 minutes while Mira studied their surroundings. She noticed that the ice formations weren't random. They followed a pattern, which meant there was probably water flowing underneath heated by geothermal activity. Where there was heat, there might be life. And where there was life, there was food. "Follow me," she said quietly. The others stopped arguing and looked at her. Torres frowned. "Why should we follow you?" "Because I know how to survive in places that want you dead." Mira started walking toward a cluster of ice formations that looked different from the rest, slightly darker, with steam rising from cracks in their surface. "You can come with me, or you can freeze arguing. Your choice." After a moment's hesitation, they followed. The ice formations led to a cave system, and inside the temperature was bearable. More importantly, there was a small pool of heated water, probably from an underground spring. Around the pool grew strange fungus, pale and luminescent. Mira knelt and examined it carefully. "Is that edible?" Pim asked hopefully. "Probably not without cooking it first." Mira used her knife to carefully scrape some into her hand. "But if we can make fire, we can make this work." "How do we make fire with nothing?" Crest demanded. "We have uniforms, don't we? The synthetic fabric burns if you expose it to a high enough temperature. We just need a spark." Mira looked at the Delcari. "You're an engineer. Can you create a spark?" Pim blinked, then his face brightened. "The power cells in our comm beacons. If I can extract one without activating the beacon itself, I can short it to create heat." "Do it," Torres said. Smart thinking. They spent the next hour setting up camp. Pim managed to extract a power cell and create fire using shredded uniform fabric as kindling. Mira cooked the fungus carefully. testing small amounts first to make sure it wouldn't poison them. It tasted horrible, but it was calories, and that was what mattered. Over the next 4 days, they followed Mira's lead more and more. She found edible ice moss growing on the north-facing slopes. She identified safe routes through the crevasse fields by reading the patterns in the ice. She even managed to trap a small creature that looked like a cross between a rabbit and a lizard, providing them with actual protein. On the evening of the 4th day, as they huddled around their small fire in another cave, Torres looked at her with open respect. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked. Mira shrugged. "I taught myself. When you're alone, you learn fast or you die." "You were alone?" Cress's golden eyes reflected the firelight. "How long?" 12 years. The group fell silent. Pim's mandibles clicked softly. 12 years? By yourself? How is that possible? It just is. Mira didn't want to elaborate. Her past wasn't their business. "We should sleep. Tomorrow we reach the extraction point." They arrived at the extraction point on the morning of the 5th day, cold and hungry, but alive. Out of the 30 recruits, only 12 teams made it on time. 3 teams had activated their beacons and failed. 2 teams had missed the deadline. 1 team had suffered injuries severe enough to require medical evacuation. Instructor Vex stood at the extraction point, his forearms crossed. "Acceptable," he said to Mira's group. "You survived. More importantly, you worked together." Most teams fell apart within the first day. Over the following months, the training intensified. Combat drills, weapons training, tactical simulations, zero-gravity operations, hostile environment survival. Mira absorbed it all like a sponge. The combat training was new, but the survival skills came naturally. She excelled at infiltration exercises because she knew how to move silently, how to become invisible in plain sight. What surprised her most was that she started to enjoy it. Not the violence, but the challenge. The constant push to be better, faster, smarter. For the first time in years, she was around people who respected competence over conformity. Nobody cared about her lack of formal education or her strange background. All that mattered was whether you could complete the mission. Major Kells visited the facility 6 months into the training cycle. She observed the exercises from the control room, and afterward she called Mira to her office. "You're doing well," Kells said. "Better than expected, actually. The instructors are impressed." "Thank you, ma'am." Mira stood at attention, though it still felt strange to her. "At ease." Kells gestured to a chair. "I'm here because I wanted to check on your progress personally. When I recruited you, I took a risk. Not everyone agreed with my decision, but I believed you had potential. Did I prove you right? So far, yes. But the real test is coming. In 2 months, you'll face the final evaluation. It's a live exercise, a real mission in contested space. Half the recruits who attempt it fail. Some don't come back at all." Kells's expression grew serious. "I need to know if you're ready for that. If you have any doubts, tell me now." Mira thought about the question. Was she ready? She had spent 12 years alone, fighting to survive every single day. She had learned to adapt, to overcome, to endure. But this was different. This was choosing to walk into danger instead of hiding from it. "I'm ready," she said finally. "I didn't come this far to quit now." Kells nodded slowly. "Good. Because there's something else you should know. The mission you'll be sent on, it's not just an evaluation. It's real intelligence gathering in Kryn territory. Whatever you find, whatever you do, it will matter. People's lives could depend on your success." "No pressure then," Mira said dryly. For the first time, Kells laughed. "You'll do fine. Trust your instincts. They've kept you alive this long." After Kells left, Mira returned to the barracks. Torres and Cress were there, along with a few other recruits who had survived the training so far. They were talking about the final evaluation, speculating about what it would involve. "I heard it's a retrieval mission," Torres said. "Someone important trapped behind enemy lines." "I heard it's sabotage," Cress countered. "Destroying a Kryn weapons facility." "Whatever it is, I just want to get it over with," Pim muttered. The Delcari had struggled through combat training, but had proven himself invaluable during technical operations. "I'm tired of simulations. Give me a real problem to solve." Mira listened to them but didn't contribute. She had learned that the less you said, the more people underestimated you, and being underestimated was often an advantage. The 2 months passed quickly. More training, more drills, more endless repetitions until every movement became muscle memory. When the day finally came, Instructor Vex assembled the remaining recruits in the briefing room. "Tomorrow you deploy," he said. "Your targets, your objectives, and your teams will be assigned tonight. Study your mission parameters carefully. Once you're in the field, you're on your own. No support, no backup, no second chances. Succeed and you become special operations. Fail and you go home. He paused, his silver eyes sweeping across the room. One more thing. The missions are real. The enemies are real. The consequences are real. Some of you may not return. If you've made peace with that, then you're ready. If you haven't, it's too late now. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk and thought about the path that had brought her here. From a forgotten colony to a military training facility, from hiding in shadows to walking into the light. She had changed so much in these months, but part of her was still that scared 7-year-old girl hiding in the maintenance tunnels, hoping nobody would find her. Tomorrow would prove whether she had really escaped that girl, or if she was still just hiding in a different way. The mission briefing came at dawn. Mira sat in a small room with 4 other recruits, none of whom she knew well. This was intentional, she realized. They wanted to see how quickly teams of strangers could learn to work together under pressure. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a star system deep in Kryn space. A middle-aged Colossian officer, her tentacles shifting through various shades of blue, stood beside the display. Your target is a research station orbiting the 4th planet in the Thalmir system, she explained. Intelligence suggests the Kryn are developing a new type of shield technology there. Your objective is to infiltrate the station, gather data on their research, and extract without being detected. If detection is unavoidable, you are authorized to use lethal force. But understand that starting a firefight this deep in enemy territory likely means you won't make it out. One of the recruits, a young Corvan male with blue-scaled skin, raised his hand. What kind of defenses are we looking at? The station has minimal military presence. 15 guards, mostly automated security systems. The real challenge is getting in and out unnoticed. The Kryn have sensor arrays throughout the system. If they detect your approach, they'll scramble fighters before you even reach the station. Another recruit spoke up, a human woman named Chen who had excelled in technical operations. How do we approach without being detected? That's for you to figure out. The officer's tentacles shifted to a darker blue, which Mira had learned meant amusement. This is your evaluation, not a guided tour. You have access to a stealth shuttle and standard special operations equipment. Everything else is up to you. Questions? Nobody spoke. The officer nodded and the holographic display changed, showing detailed schematics of the station and the surrounding space. You have 6 hours to plan your approach. Launch window opens at 1400 hours. The Kryn change their patrol patterns every 48 hours, which means you have 2 days maximum to complete the mission. After that, the difficulty increases exponentially. She looked at each of them in turn. Good luck. You'll need it. After the briefing, the team gathered in the planning room. Mira studied the schematics carefully while the others talked. The Corvan, whose name was Rax, seemed to want to take charge. He had military experience and wasn't shy about sharing his opinions. We approach from the shadow of the moon, he said, pointing at the display. Use the gravity well to mask our signature, then burn hard for the station. Fast insertion, fast extraction. That's suicide, Chen countered. Even a small burn that close to the station will light us up on their sensors. We need something subtler. Like what? Like using the station's supply route. Chen manipulated the display, highlighting a commercial shipping lane that passed within range of the target. Civilian freighters pass through this area every 12 hours. We could match course and speed with one of them. Hide in their sensor shadow until we're close enough to coast in on minimal power. That could work, said the 3rd recruit, a massive Urgoth female named Kale. Her species was known for their physical strength and surprisingly delicate touch with technology. But we'd need precise timing. Miss the window and we're exposed. Better than burning straight at them like Rax wants to do, Chen replied. They argued for another hour, each person pushing their own approach. Mira listened and said nothing. She was too busy studying the schematics, looking for details the others had missed. Finally, she saw it. The research station has an exhaust port here. She pointed at a small detail on the lower section of the station. It vents waste heat from their reactor every 4 hours. During the venting cycle, there's a brief window where the thermal signature spikes. If we approach during that window, our heat signature would be lost in the noise. Everyone turned to look at her. Rax frowned. That's a tiny window. What, maybe 30 seconds? 45, according to these specs, Mira replied. But it's enough. We coast in cold until the venting cycle starts, then use a single burn to match velocity with the station. The burn would be masked by the exhaust plume. Chen studied the numbers, then nodded slowly. That could actually work. It's risky, but everything about this mission is risky. I like it, Kale rumbled. Quiet approach, minimal exposure. Very human thinking. What's that supposed to mean? Rax demanded. Humans are good at finding small advantages and exploiting them, Kale said. No offense meant. It's a compliment. They spent the next few hours refining the plan, working out timing and approach vectors. By the time the launch window arrived, everyone knew their role. Mira would pilot the shuttle during the critical approach phase. Jen would handle electronic countermeasures and data extraction. Kale and Rax would provide security. The fifth member, a quiet Valyrian named Syl, who could change her skin color at will, would scout ahead using her natural camouflage abilities. The stealth shuttle was small and cramped, built for infiltration rather than comfort. They launched on schedule, burning out of the training facility's orbit and transitioning to faster-than-light travel. The jump to Kryn space took 6 hours, during which everyone tried to rest. Mira found that she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept running through the plan, looking for flaws, preparing for complications. When they dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Thalmir system, the reality of their situation hit home. They were now deep in hostile territory, surrounded by enemies with no support and no backup. If anything went wrong, they would die here and nobody would ever know what happened to them. Picking up sensor contacts, Chen reported quietly. 3 patrol craft, standard Kryn corvettes. They're running a standard patrol pattern, nothing unusual. We should be outside their detection range as long as we stay cold. Mira guided the shuttle through the outer system, using minimal thrusters to adjust their course. Space was vast and empty, which worked in their favor. The Kryn couldn't watch everything at once, and a small shuttle running silent was nearly impossible to detect at this range. They drifted for 8 hours, gradually working their way closer to the target. The research station appeared on their scopes, a cylindrical structure bristling with sensor arrays and docking ports. It orbited the 4th planet in a predictable pattern, which made timing the approach easier. Next venting cycle in 20 minutes, Chen whispered, as if the enemy could hear them through the vacuum of space. Everyone ready? They checked their equipment one last time. Breaching charges, data extraction tools, weapons set to minimum power to avoid detection. Syl's skin had already shifted to match the metallic gray of the station's hull. She would go in first, disable external sensors, and create an entry point for the rest of them. The minutes crawled by. Mira kept her hands on the controls, her eyes on the instruments. Everything had to be perfect. One mistake and they would be detected, and detection meant death. Venting cycle starting now, Chen announced. On the display, thermal readings from the station spiked as superheated gas erupted from the exhaust port. The plume was enormous, a bright flare of heat that would blind any thermal sensors in the area. Executing burn, Mira said calmly. She fired the thrusters for exactly 3 seconds, a carefully calculated burst that matched their velocity with the station. The shuttle shuddered slightly, then went silent again. They were coasting now, riding the edge of the exhaust plume, invisible to anyone watching. Perfect, Chen breathed. We're in their shadow. They drifted closer, using tiny bursts from the attitude thrusters to fine-tune their approach. The station grew larger in the viewport, its surface covered in metal plating and sensor nodes. Mira brought them alongside the section Syl had identified as the best entry point, a maintenance hatch far from the main facilities. Syl, you're up, Rax said. The Valyrian moved to the airlock, her color already perfectly matched to the station's exterior. When the airlock opened, she simply disappeared against the hull, her movements so smooth and natural that Mira lost track of her within seconds. They waited in tense silence. 3 minutes passed. 5. Then Syl's voice came through the comm, barely audible. Sensors disabled. Hatches open. You're clear to dock. Mira brought the shuttle in carefully, magnetic clamps engaging with barely a whisper of sound. They moved through the airlock one by one, weapons ready, every sense alert for danger. The interior of the station was cold and dim, lit only by emergency lighting strips along the floor. The air smelled strange, with a chemical tang that made Mira's nose wrinkle. Kryn stations always smelled wrong to human senses, something about the atmosphere mixture they preferred. Research lab is 3 levels up, Chen whispered, checking her scanner. I'm picking up life signs, but they're concentrated in the living quarters. Looks like most of the staff is sleeping. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, Syl taking point with her natural camouflage, while the rest followed in her wake. The station was eerily quiet except for the hum of machinery and the occasional hiss of ventilation systems. The research lab was secured behind a locked door with biometric scanners. Chen went to work immediately, pulling out her tools and interfacing with the security system. Her fingers flew across her portable terminal, running decryption algorithms and bypass protocols. These systems are more sophisticated than expected, she muttered. Give me 3 minutes. Mira and the others took up defensive positions, watching the corridor in both directions. Every sound made her heart rate spike. Every flicker of shadow could be an enemy. But the minutes passed without incident, and finally Chen's terminal chimed softly. We're in. The door slid open silently. Inside, the lab was a maze of equipment and workstations, holographic displays showing complex equations and schematics. At the center of the room stood a strange device, roughly spherical, covered in crystalline structures that pulsed with a faint blue light. That's it, Kyle whispered. That's the shield generator prototype. Chen moved to the nearest terminal and began extracting data, her fingers flying across the controls. Mira kept watch at the door while Rax and Kale examined the prototype more closely. Syl had disappeared again, scouting the surrounding corridors to ensure they weren't surprised. This is incredible, Chen breathed. According to these files, this shield technology can deflect energy weapons at 90% efficiency. That's twice as effective as current Union shields. How long until you have everything? Mira asked quietly. Another 2 minutes. There's a lot of data here. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. Mira's nerves were stretched tight, every instinct screaming that something was about to go wrong. And then right on schedule it did. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors. Syl's voice crackled through the comm, tight with urgency. We've been compromised. Guard Patrol changed routes, spotted our entry point. They're mobilizing the entire security force. Chen, we need to move, Rax barked. 30 more seconds, I'm almost done. We don't have 30 seconds. The sound of boots thundering through the corridor outside made the decision for them. Chen grabbed her terminal and yanked it free of the station's system. The data extraction incomplete but better than nothing. They burst out of the lab just as Kryn guards rounded the corner. Insectoid faces twisted in aggression, weapons raised. Contact! Kale roared, opening fire. The corridor erupted in chaos. Energy bolts filled the air, striking walls and creating showers of sparks. Mira dropped to one knee and fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding its target. She had trained for this, practiced it 1,000 times, but the reality was louder and more terrifying than any simulation. Fall back to the shuttle. Rax shouted over the noise. They retreated in a fighting withdrawal, Kale and Rax providing covering fire while Chen and Mira moved back. Syl appeared and disappeared, her camouflage allowing her to strike from unexpected angles, causing confusion among the guards. More Kryn arrived, blocking their escape route. They were trapped between two groups of enemies in a corridor with no cover and no good options. This way! Mira spotted a ventilation shaft, the grate already partially removed. Through the vent system. Are you insane? Rax demanded. You got a better idea? She didn't wait for an answer. She fired one last burst to keep the guards back, then dove into the shaft. It was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for her shoulders, but it would have to work. She heard the others following behind her, Kale cursing as her larger frame struggled to fit. The vent system ran throughout the station, a maze of metal tunnels that Mira navigated by instinct more than anything else. Years of crawling through maintenance shafts on the colony had prepared her for exactly this. She knew how to read the flow of air, how to sense which passages led to open spaces and which were dead ends. Behind them, the guards were trying to follow, but they were too slow. Mira led her team through twists and turns, dropping down vertical shafts and squeezing through impossibly tight spaces, until finally they emerged in a lower level near the docking ports. Shuttle is 200 meters that way, Chen panted, checking her scanner. They ran, abandoning any pretense of stealth. Alarms were still blaring. Guards were everywhere, but now it was just a race to see if they could reach the shuttle before being cut off. Mira saw the airlock ahead and pushed her legs to move faster. Energy bolts whizzed past her head. Something clipped her shoulder, sending pain lancing through her arm, but she didn't stop. The airlock door was open, the shuttle waiting beyond. They piled through the airlock, Kale being last and laying down suppressing fire as the door sealed. Mira threw herself into the pilot's seat and fired the engines without waiting for clearance or safety checks. The shuttle tore away from the station, alarms screaming as the systems protested the rough treatment. Behind them, the station's point defense weapons opened fire, tracking their escape. Mira threw the shuttle into a wild, evasive pattern, using every trick she had learned, pushing the engines beyond their safety limits. 3 corvettes breaking orbit, Chen called out. They're coming after us. Can we jump to FTL? Rax demanded. Not for another 2 minutes. We need more distance from the gravity well. 2 minutes might as well have been 2 hours. The corvettes were faster, closing the gap rapidly. Weapons fire lanced through space, and the shuttle shook as glancing hits struck the shields. Mira's mind raced, looking for any advantage. The fourth planet loomed ahead, its atmosphere thick with storm systems. Dangerous, unstable, the kind of place that sensor systems struggled with. "Hold on," she said grimly, and dove straight toward the planet. "What are you doing?" Rax shouted, losing them in the storms. "Trust me." The shuttle plunged into the upper atmosphere, buffeted by winds that would have torn apart a less sturdy craft. The corvettes followed, but they were larger and less maneuverable. The storm's electromagnetic interference played havoc with their targeting systems. Mira pushed the shuttle deeper, riding the edge of what the craft could handle, using the storm itself as a weapon. She led the corvettes on a wild chase through lightning storms and pressure systems, each turn taking them closer to the planet's crushing lower atmosphere. One of the corvettes pulled up, unable to follow any deeper. The other two kept coming, determined to finish them. "FTL capable in 30 seconds, Chen reported. 20 seconds. The hull groaned under the stress. Warning lights covered every panel. 10 seconds. One of the pursuing corvettes made a mistake, turned too sharply, and was caught by a downdraft that sent it spiraling out of control. 5 seconds. The last corvette fired everything it had, a desperate salvo that lit up space behind them. "Jump!" Mira screamed. The FTL drive engaged and reality twisted. The last thing Mira saw was the surface of the fourth planet rushing up to meet them. And then they were somewhere else, racing through the void between stars, leaving their enemies far behind. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They just sat in their seats, breathing hard, trying to process the fact that they were still alive. Finally, Kale started laughing. "That was insane. That was brilliant," Chen corrected. "Mira, that flying was incredible." Rax looked at her with something like respect. "Where did you learn to pilot like that?" Mira flexed her injured shoulder and managed a tired smile. 12 years alone on a dead planet. You learned things. They had survived. They had completed the mission. The debriefing took place in a secure facility that Mira had never seen before. The walls were blank gray metal and the air smelled sterile. Her team sat around a conference table while senior officers reviewed their mission reports and the data Chen had extracted from the Kryn research station. Admiral Thrace, a grizzled human with silver hair and cold eyes, studied the holographic display showing the shield technology schematics. "This is good work," he said finally. "Intelligence confirms that these designs are authentic. If the Kryn deploy this technology across their fleet, it will significantly shift the balance of power in the border regions." "Does that mean we passed?" Rax asked, unable to hide the hope in his voice. "You all passed," Instructor Vex confirmed from the corner of the room. His forearms were folded, but his mandibles clicked in what Mira had learned was approval. "Against considerable odds, you completed an extraction under fire and returned with valuable intelligence. That's exactly what Special Operations requires." Relief washed through the room. Chen grinned. Kale rumbled something pleased in her native language. Even Syl, usually so composed, allowed herself a small smile. However, Admiral Thrace continued, and the mood immediately sobered. "Your mission revealed something concerning. The Kryn changed their patrol patterns 8 hours ahead of schedule. That's unusual. It suggests they may have been expecting someone to make an attempt on that facility. You think we had a leak?" Rax frowned. "Unknown. But it's being investigated." The Admiral's eyes moved to Mira. "I'm particularly interested in how you led your team to safety, the ventilation shaft escape and the atmospheric pursuit. Quick thinking under pressure. Where did you learn those tactics?" "Experience, sir," Mira replied carefully. "I spent a lot of time in maintenance systems growing up, and when you're being chased, you use whatever advantages the environment gives you. Unorthodox but effective." He tapped something on his data pad. "All of you are hereby promoted to full Special Operations status. You'll receive your assignments within the week. Dismissed." They filed out of the briefing room, and for the first time since arriving at Iron Shore, Mira felt like she belonged somewhere. The other recruits, now fellow operators, congratulated each other in the hallway. Torres appeared from another briefing room, having completed his own mission, and wrapped Mira in a sudden hug that caught her completely off guard. "I heard you flew through a planetary storm system," he said with a wide grin. "That's hardcore." "It was necessary," Mira replied, awkwardly extricating herself from the embrace. She still wasn't comfortable with casual physical contact. Still, you're a legend now. That evening, Major Kells found Mira in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The Major carried 2 cups of something hot and handed one to Mira without asking. "Coffee," Kells explained. Real stuff, not the synthesized garbage they serve in the mess hall. Congratulations on your success. Thank you, ma'am. Mira sipped the coffee and found it was indeed better than anything she'd had in months. What happens now? Now you get your first real assignment. Kells leaned against the railing beside her. There's a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories. We're pulling together a task force and I specifically requested you for my team. Your team? I thought you were command staff. I am. But I also lead a field unit when the situation requires it. We handle the jobs that are too sensitive or too dangerous for standard operations. Kells paused. I won't lie to you, Mira. The work we do is difficult. It's the kind of thing that keeps you awake at night. But it's also important. We stop threats before they become catastrophes. We save lives that most people don't even know are in danger. What's the situation in the Outer Rim? That's classified until you're officially on the team. But I can tell you this. There are colonies out there, human colonies that are disappearing, not being destroyed or evacuated, just vanishing. Entire settlements with thousands of people gone without a trace. Someone needs to find out what's happening and stop it. Disappearing colonies. The word sent a chill through Mira. She thought about Dust Ridge, about being forgotten, about the fear of vanishing without anyone caring. When do we leave? 3 days. That gives you time to rest and prepare. You'll be briefed with the rest of the team tomorrow. Kells finished her coffee and set the cup aside. I know you're still figuring out where you fit in all this, but I want you to know that I'm glad you chose this path. You have a gift for survival, Mira. Not everyone does. In this line of work, that gift can make the difference between success and failure. After Kells left, Mira remained in the observation deck for a long time. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a scared orphan hiding in tunnels to a special operations agent, about to embark on a mission to save people she'd never met. It felt surreal. The next day, she met the rest of Kells's team. There were 8 of them in total. Torres was there, which pleased Mira more than she expected. Cress, the Sethian from her initial survival training, had also made the cut. The others were veterans with multiple successful missions under their belts. There was Commander Jax, a Turian with cybernetic enhancements who served as the team's tactical specialist. Dr. Yenna, a human medic with a sharp wit and steady hands. Gorath, a massive Krolth warrior whose species was famous for their honor codes and combat prowess. And finally Whisper, a Nathari infiltrator whose species could manipulate electromagnetic fields, making her nearly invisible to electronic surveillance. This is the team, Kells announced as they gathered in the briefing room. We've worked together for 3 years and we're still alive, which says something. Mira, Torres, Cress, you're the newest additions. Everyone else make them feel welcome but don't coddle them. They earned their place here. The holographic display activated, showing a section of space far from the core Union worlds. The Outer Rim colonies are located in what we call the Fringe. Low population, minimal infrastructure, mostly independent settlements that don't answer directly to Union authority. In the past 6 months, 4 colonies have gone dark. No distress calls, no evacuation orders, just silence. Could be system failures, Commander Jax suggested. Those colonies don't always maintain their communication arrays properly. That's what we thought after the first 2, Kells replied. But when the 3rd colony disappeared, we sent a scout ship to investigate. They found the colony intact but completely empty, buildings undamaged, equipment still running, personal belongings left behind as if everyone had just walked away in the middle of their daily routines. Dr. Yenna leaned forward. Any signs of violence? Forced entry? None. It was as if several thousand people decided to vanish simultaneously. Kells changed the display to show detailed scans of the abandoned colony. We brought in forensic teams, but they found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no chemical or biological agents. Just emptiness. What about the 4th colony? Mira asked. It disappeared 2 weeks ago. We haven't been able to get a team there yet because of increased Kryn activity in the region. They're taking advantage of the instability to probe our defenses. Kells's expression hardened. Our mission is to reach the 4th colony before anyone else does, figure out what's happening and stop it. If the Kryn are behind this, we need to know. If it's something else, we need to know that too. When do we leave? Gorath rumbled. His voice was deep and resonant, the kind of voice that commanded attention. Tomorrow at dawn, we'll be taking a modified courier ship fast and stealthy. The trip will take 4 days, during which time you'll all get to know each other and review the mission parameters in detail. Kells looked at each of them. I need to be clear about the risks. We're going into an active mystery with limited intelligence. Whatever took those people might still be there. We need to be ready for anything. The team dispersed to prepare their gear. Mira found herself in the armory with Torres, selecting weapons and equipment from the extensive inventory. Torres was examining a plasma rifle with obvious appreciation. "This is better than the training weapons," he said. "Real military-grade hardware. Makes it feel official." "It is official," Mira replied, checking the charge on a compact energy pistol. "We're not recruits anymore. Doesn't it scare you? Going after something that can make entire colonies disappear?" Mira considered the question. "Everything scares me. But I learned a long time ago that fear doesn't help. You deal with problems as they come, adapt to situations as they change, and hope you're smart enough to survive." "That's very practical." Torres grinned, also kind of dark. "It's realistic." She selected a knife, testing its balance. "What about you? Why did you join Special Operations?" "Family tradition. My father was military, his father before him. I wanted to prove I could do more than just follow orders." He paused. "Though I'll admit, after that mission in Kryn space, I'm wondering if I made the right choice." "You did fine. We all did. Only because you knew how to navigate those vents and fly through that storm. Without you, we'd be dead or captured." Torres looked at her seriously. "I'm glad you're on this team, Mira. Something tells me we're going to need your particular skills very soon." That night, Mira couldn't sleep again. She kept thinking about the disappearing colonies, trying to imagine what could cause entire populations to vanish. Pirates wouldn't leave everything intact. A plague would leave bodies. Forced relocation would trigger distress signals. Nothing made sense. She got up and went to the ship's small gym, thinking that physical exercise might tire her enough to rest. To her surprise, Major Kells was already there, running through combat forms with practiced precision.
"Can't sleep either?"
Kells asked without stopping her movements. "No, ma'am. Call me Sarah when we're off duty. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. Might as well dispense with excessive formality." She finished her form and grabbed a towel. "What's keeping you awake?" "The mission. I keep trying to figure out what could make people disappear like that." "So do I." Sarah sat down on a bench and gestured for Mira to join her. "I've been in special operations for 8 years. I've seen things that most people wouldn't believe. Alien technologies that bend the laws of physics. Biological weapons that can rewrite DNA. Experiments that should never have been conducted. But this is different. It feels wrong in a way I can't quite explain. Do you think we'll find answers? I think we'll find something. Whether it's the answers we're looking for is another question entirely." Sarah studied Mira's face. "You're worried you won't be able to handle it." It wasn't a question, so Mira didn't bother denying it. "I'm good at surviving. I'm not sure if I'm good at saving others. Neither was I when I started. But you learn. You find that the skills that kept you alive can also keep other people alive. And eventually saving others becomes more important than saving yourself." Sarah stood up. "Get some rest, Mira. Tomorrow we begin a journey that might change everything. You'll need your strength for whatever we find out there." Mira returned to her quarters and forced herself to lie down. Sleep came eventually, bringing with it dreams of empty colonies and echoing corridors, of people who had walked away into nothing and left everything behind. In the dream, she searched through the abandoned buildings, calling out names of people she had never known, finding only silence in response. When she woke, it was time to leave. The courier ship named Silent Runner dropped out of FTL at the edge of the target system 4 days later. The crew had spent the journey reviewing every scrap of intelligence about the missing colonies and running simulations of potential scenarios. None of the simulations had felt right. There were too many unknowns, too many variables that couldn't be accounted for. The colony, designated as New Haven, appeared on their sensors as a small cluster of structures on the surface of a temperate moon. Everything looked normal from orbit. Power signatures were active, the atmosphere was stable, and there were no signs of damage or conflict. "Same as the others," Commander Jax observed grimly. "Everything functioning perfectly except for the complete absence of people." "Take us down," Sarah ordered. Standard approach. "Weapons hot but don't fire unless fired upon. Everyone suit up." We go in expecting the worst. Mira checked her gear methodically. Armor, weapons, scanning equipment, emergency medical supplies. Everything had its place, everything had a purpose. Torres caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up. She returned the gesture, though her stomach was tight with tension. The Silent Runner landed in New Haven's main courtyard. Through the viewport, Mira could see the colony spread out before them. Residential buildings, a central administration complex, agricultural domes, all of it looking exactly like it should except for the eerie stillness. No people walking between buildings. No vehicles moving on the roads. No signs of life anywhere. First team with me, Sarah commanded. Jax, you have command of the ship. If we're not back in 6 hours or if anything happens, you jump out and report to command. Understood. Be careful down there. They exited through the airlock, weapons raised and scanning their surroundings. The air was breathable but cold, with a wind that carried the scent of growing things from the agricultural domes. Somewhere in the distance, wind chimes rang with a haunting melody. Spread out. Standard search pattern. Stay in communication and don't go anywhere alone. Sarah's voice was calm but firm through the comm system. Mira partnered with Whisper, the Nathari infiltrator. They moved toward the residential section, while the others took different areas. The buildings were unlocked, doors standing open as if the residents had just stepped out for a moment. Inside, everything was untouched. Meals half-eaten on tables, beds unmade. Children's toys scattered on floors. It was like walking through a snapshot of life interrupted. This is unsettling, Whisper murmured. Her electromagnetic field manipulation made her appear as a shimmer in the air when she moved. Where did they go? I don't know, Mira replied, examining a family photo on the wall. Smiling faces, a moment of happiness captured forever. But they left everything. People don't abandon their lives like this voluntarily. They continued through the building, finding more of the same. Personal items, clothing, data pads, everything that people would take if they were planning to leave. Whatever had happened here, it had happened suddenly. Team, converge on my position. Sarah's voice crackled through the comm. I found something in the administration building. Mira and Whisper hurried to join the others. The administration building was larger than the rest, with a central computer core and communication arrays. Sarah stood in front of a large display showing security footage. Watch this, she said, activating the playback. The footage showed the colony during what appeared to be an ordinary day, people moving through their routines, working, talking, living. Then, at exactly 3:14 in the afternoon local time, everything changed. Every person in the colony stopped what they were doing simultaneously. They all turned in the same direction, toward the western edge of the settlement, and began walking. Not running, not panicking, just walking calmly and deliberately toward something the cameras couldn't see. Within 20 minutes, the entire colony was empty. Several thousand people had simply walked away, disappearing beyond the camera's range. What could make them do that? Torres asked, his voice shaken. It's like they were all being controlled. Psionic influence, Gorath suggested. Some species can manipulate minds, though never on this scale. Run it back, Dr. Yenna said. Focus on individual faces. Sarah rewound the footage and zoomed in on different people. Their expressions were blank, eyes unfocused, moving with the mechanical precision of puppets on strings. Whatever had taken control of them had stripped away their free will completely. This is an attack, Kress hissed, his scales darkening with anger. Someone or something is stealing these people. But why? Mira studied the footage, looking for any detail that might provide a clue. What's the purpose? If you want to eliminate a colony, you destroy it. If you want slaves, you leave evidence of abduction. This is something else. Look at the timestamp, Whisper pointed out. 3:14 in the afternoon. Let me check the other colonies. She pulled up data from the previous disappearances. Each one had occurred at exactly 3:14 local time on their respective worlds. The pattern was too precise to be coincidence. Something is triggering this event, Commander Jax's voice came through from the ship. Some kind of signal or broadcast that activates at a specific time. Have you found the source? Not yet, Sarah replied. But we're going to follow the path those people took. If they're still alive somewhere, we need to find them. They followed the trail westward from the colony, moving through fields and into a forested area that the colonists had left mostly untouched. The ground showed signs of many feet passing through, a path worn by thousands of people walking in the same direction. After 2 kilometers, the forest opened into a clearing. In the center stood something that made Mira's blood run cold. It was a structure, but not one built by human hands or any species she recognized. It was organic and metallic at the same time, pulsing with a sickly green light covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. What is that thing? Torres breathed. A beacon, Dr. Yenna said, her scanner picking up strange readings. It's broadcasting some kind of signal, but it's not electromagnetic. It's something else, something that interacts directly with neural tissue. Around the structure, partially buried in the ground, were bodies, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all in various states of decomposition. The colonists hadn't been taken. They had been drawn here, compelled to walk into this clearing, and then they had simply died, adding their bodies to the growing pile. This is a harvest, Sarah said quietly, her face pale. These structures are collecting people, using them for some purpose we don't understand yet. We need to destroy it, Gorath growled, raising his weapon. Wait, Mira said suddenly. If we destroy it, we might trigger a response. There could be more of these beacons on other worlds ready to activate. We need to understand how it works first. Dr. Yenna moved closer, scanning the structure with her equipment. The beacon is receiving instructions from somewhere else. It's part of a network. If I can trace the signal back to its source, we might find whoever is behind this. How long will that take? Sarah asked. Unknown. The signal is complex, using quantum entanglement principles I've never seen before. Could be minutes, could be hours, we don't have hours. That beacon might activate again at 3:14 and we're standing right next to it. Sarah made a decision. Yenna, you have 30 minutes to trace that signal. Everyone else secure the perimeter. If anything approaches, I want to know about it. Mira took up a position at the edge of the clearing, her weapon trained on the forest. 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Then Whisper's voice came through urgently. I'm detecting movement. Something's coming from underground. The ground began to tremble. In the center of the clearing near the beacon, the earth cracked and split open. Something emerged, massive and terrible. A creature that seemed to be made of the same organic metal as the structure. It had too many limbs, too many eyes, a nightmare given physical form. Guardian construct, Dr. Yenna shouted. The beacon is protected! The creature moved with horrifying speed, striking at Gorath with limbs that ended in bladed appendages. The Kroth warrior barely managed to dodge, rolling to the side and returning fire. Energy bolts splashed against the creature's hide, causing it to shriek but not slowing it down. Concentrate fire, Sarah ordered. The team unleashed everything they had. Plasma bolts, explosive rounds, energy beams, all of it hammering into the creature. It shuddered under the assault but kept coming, its movements becoming more frenzied. Mira saw her opportunity. While the creature was focused on the others, she sprinted toward the beacon itself. If they couldn't kill the Guardian, maybe they could disable what it was protecting. Mira, what are you doing? Torres's voice in her ear. Ending this, she replied, pulling explosive charges from her pack. She reached the base of the beacon and began placing charges at structural weak points, working quickly despite the chaos around her. The creature sensed what she was doing and turned toward her, abandoning its attack on the others. Mira, move, Sarah screamed. She finished placing the last charge and ran, but the creature was faster. A bladed limb swept toward her, too quick to dodge. She threw herself backward, felt the blade slice across her armor, felt the impact throw her to the ground. Pain exploded through her side. The world tilted and spun. Through blurred vision, she saw Gorath charge the creature, his war cry echoing across the clearing. He drove his blade deep into the thing's central mass, holding it in place while the others poured fire into it. Detonate the charges. Mira gasped into her comm, fumbling for the remote trigger. You're too close, Torres shouted back. Do it! Now, Sarah made the call. Everyone take cover. Whisper, get Mira out of there. The Nathari infiltrator appeared beside Mira in a shimmer of distorted light, her strong arms pulling Mira away from the beacon. They had barely made it 10 meters when the charges detonated. The explosion was massive, a column of fire and debris that reached into the sky. The beacon shattered, fragments of organic metal spinning through the air. The Guardian creature let out a final shriek and collapsed, its connection to the beacon severed. When the smoke cleared, the beacon was gone. Only a crater remained, still glowing with residual energy. The oppressive feeling that had hung over the clearing lifted, replaced by an eerie silence. Dr. Yenna rushed to Mira's side, medical scanner already out. She's bleeding internally. I need to stabilize her now. The world faded in and out. Mira felt hands on her, felt the sting of injections, heard voices talking urgently. Time became meaningless, stretching and contracting in strange ways. When clarity returned, she was back aboard the silent runner, lying in the medical bay. Her side ached, but the pain was manageable, dulled by whatever medication they had given her. Welcome back, Dr. Yenna said with a tired smile. You gave us quite a scare. That blade punctured your armor and cracked 2 ribs. You're lucky it didn't go deeper. The beacon? Mira asked, her voice rough. Destroyed. And before you ask, yes, I managed to trace the signal before everything went to hell. That's the good news. Yenna's smile faded. The bad news is what I found. The beacon was receiving instructions from a ship in orbit around a gas giant in a nearby system. A Kryn ship. Mira tried to sit up, but Yenna pushed her back down. The Kryn are behind this? It appears so, though the technology isn't theirs. We think they found it somewhere and have been using it as a weapon. create mass disappearances in Union territory, cause panic and confusion, weaken our position in the fringe. We need to stop them. We will. Sarah already transmitted our findings to command. A full battle group is being assembled to deal with the Kryn ship. Yenna checked her scanner one more time. But that's not your concern right now. Your concern is healing. You're grounded for at least 2 weeks. The mission continued without her. Mira spent the next days in the medical bay, frustrated by her inability to help. She watched through the ship's systems as a Union fleet engaged the Kryn vessel. The battle was brief but decisive. The Kryn ship was destroyed, along with the technology they had been using to control the beacons. Investigation teams found 3 more beacons on other colony worlds, all of them inactive after the command ship's destruction. The colonies had been evacuated as a precaution, their populations relocated to safer locations until the threat could be fully assessed. When Mira was finally cleared for duty, Sarah called a team meeting in the briefing room. Because of our actions, we saved dozens of potential colonies from the same fate as New Haven, Sarah announced. Command estimates we prevented the loss of over 50,000 lives. The Kryn have lost a major strategic asset, and their plans for destabilizing the fringe have been set back years. She paused, looking at each team member. Special Operations doesn't get medals or public recognition. What we do stays classified, locked away in files that most people will never see. But I want you all to know that what you did out there mattered. You saved lives. You stopped a threat that could have changed the balance of power in this entire region. Her eyes settled on Mira. And you, despite being the newest member of this team, showed the kind of courage and quick thinking that defines what we do. You put yourself in harm's way to complete the mission. That's the mark of a true operator. The team spent the next week back at the facility, filing reports and debriefing with intelligence analysts. Mira found herself pulled into meetings with senior officers who wanted to understand how she had identified the weak points in the beacon structure so quickly. I don't know, she told them honestly. I just looked at it and saw how it fit together. Like solving a puzzle. Maybe it's from all those years fixing machinery on the colony. What she didn't tell them was that looking at the beacon had felt familiar somehow, as if she had seen similar patterns before. It bothered her, that sense of recognition, but she couldn't explain it and didn't want to sound crazy. 2 weeks after returning from New Haven, Mira stood once again in the observation deck looking out at the stars. She had been doing a lot of thinking about her journey, about the path that had brought her from hiding in abandoned corridors to standing here as a special operations agent. Torres found her there, as she somehow knew he would. You've been quiet since we got back, he observed, just processing everything. Mira glanced at him. We saw a lot of death out there. All those colonists who died before we could help them. I know. It's hard. Torres was quiet for a moment. My first real mission, I thought I was prepared. Training prepares you for tactics and combat, but it doesn't prepare you for seeing innocent people suffer, for being too late to save everyone. How do you deal with it? You remember that you did save people. Maybe not everyone, but the ones you could, and you promise yourself that next time you'll be faster, smarter, better prepared. He turned to look at her directly. You made a difference, Mira. You should be proud of that. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly what makes you good at this. After Torres left, Sarah appeared. She seemed to have a talent for finding Mira when she was alone with her thoughts. I've been thinking about your future, Sarah said without preamble. You've proven yourself capable, but I think you have the potential for much more. How would you feel about specialized training? Advanced infiltration techniques, xenotechnology analysis, deep cover operations. Why me? Because you have instincts that can't be taught. You survived alone for 12 years by reading situations, adapting quickly and making the right choices under pressure. Those aren't skills you learn in a classroom. They're part of who you are. Sarah leaned against the railing. Plus, I saw how you looked at that beacon. You understood something about it that the rest of us didn't. That kind of intuitive understanding of alien technology is rare. Mira thought about it. More training meant more challenges, but it also meant becoming better at what she did, saving more lives, making a bigger difference. I'll do it, she said. When do I start? 2 months. Until then, you're staying with my team. We have another assignment coming up, something that requires a light touch and creative thinking. I think you'll find it interesting. Over the following months, Mira settled into the rhythm of special operations work. Missions came and went, each one different, each one teaching her something new. She learned to move through enemy territory like a ghost, to read alien languages by pattern recognition, to disable security systems with nothing but improvised tools. She learned to trust her team and to let them trust her. Torres became her closest friend, someone who understood the weight of the work they did. Cress taught her Sethian combat techniques. Whisper showed her how to manipulate electromagnetic fields to confuse sensors. Most importantly, she learned that she had found her place in the universe. Not hiding in shadows, but moving through them with purpose. Not running from the system, but using it to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. 6 months after the New Haven mission, Mira stood in a ceremony room she had never expected to enter. Admiral Thrace was there along with other senior officers. Her team stood in formation, all of them looking proud. "Operative Mira," the Admiral said formally, "for exceptional service in the field, for courage under fire, and for actions that directly resulted in the preservation of Union lives, you are hereby awarded the Star of Valor. This is one of our highest honors, and it is rarely given to someone so early in their career." He pinned the medal to her uniform. It was small and simple, just a silver star, but it represented everything she had become. "I also want to read something," the Admiral continued, pulling out a data pad. "This is a message from the survivors of the colonies you helped save. They wanted you to know that they exist because of your actions. Their children will grow up because you were brave enough to face an unknown threat. That's what service means. That's what it means to be one of us." The ceremony ended and people congratulated her, shook her hand, offered their respect. Through it all, Mira felt a strange sense of completion. She had started as a girl who wanted nothing more than to be left alone, to exist outside the notice of anyone who might hurt her. Now she was someone who stepped toward danger, so that others wouldn't have to. Someone who used her skills not just to survive, but to help others survive. That evening, she returned one last time to the observation deck. Sarah found her there, as always. "You did good today," Sarah said. "I never expected any of this," Mira admitted. "When you found me on that colony, I thought my life was over. I thought you were taking away my freedom. And now? Now I understand that I was never really free. I was just hiding. Real freedom is choosing who you want to be, not letting fear make the choice for you." Mira smiled slightly. "I chose to be someone who makes a difference, someone who faces the darkness so others can stay in the light. That's a good choice." Sarah stood beside her, both of them looking out at the vast expanse of stars. "There's a whole galaxy out there, Mira, full of people who need help, threats that need to be stopped, mysteries that need to be solved. And now you're part of the team that does something about it." "I'm ready," Mira said, and she meant it. She had been the girl who hid in plain sight, surviving alone in forgotten places, invisible to the world. But those days were behind her now. She had been found by the army, not as a prisoner but as a soldier. She had been given a purpose that went beyond mere survival. She was special operations now. A guardian in the shadows, a protector of those who couldn't protect themselves. And somewhere out there in the infinite darkness between stars, more threats waited to be discovered. More people needed to be saved. More battles needed to be fought. Mira smiled and turned away from the viewport. She had work to do, missions to prepare for, skills to master. The girl who hid in plain sight had become the woman who walked into the fire, and she wouldn't have it any other way.